have this small but significant group with us today. I'm very excited about what we're going to be discussing because our panelists are not relationship experts, they're not psychologists, they're not therapists, but they are men who are evolved in many ways. They have a lot of interesting experiences to share with us, and this is actually very useful for both men and women. And at the same time, they're entrepreneurs and leaders in their fields, which include cybersecurity for Nat here, health tech content for Matt over there who's visiting us from Riyadh, and Marcel is in business development. So this is not a business mixer, but if any of this sounds interesting to you, you can also get in touch with them for that. I'm actually really happy that we have the male point of view with us today because the relationship landscape seems to be dominated by my gender because we're so, we're good at analyzing things and we're good at talking about things, and I think it's time that men, caught up to us. So today is going to be interesting. They are not experts, once again, but we're going to have an interactive, relaxed discussion. It's going to be authentic, it's going to be honest, it's going to be fun. We're going to talk about everything from miscommunication to dating do's and don'ts to being ghosted or ghosting yourselves. And without further ado, who would like to go first? Okay, so we're just going to start with a short introduction from each person. Tell us about your relationship history very briefly, as well as what you do professionally. And I'm going to start with myself, and then maybe like a little bit of trivia. I am divorced, I'm a single mom, an empty nester, I'm a writer, I'm also a matchmaker, and I live in Dubai. Over to you. Should I pass it from person before you start drinking tea? Okay, Matt will go first.
Is this long enough? Yeah, it's long enough.
Yeah, it is.
That wasn't a joke. So my name's Max. I'm 45 years old. I'm actually based in Riyadh, and I've come over to Dubai exactly for this purpose, for this event. Is this actually I actually feel quite nervous about this. I've done a lot of panel discussions in the past around the world in different countries, but nothing on this topic. It's just so controversial at the moment and laden with risk. I feel it's a bit of a minefield. But I'm glad that we're doing it as well because we don't often hear about male perspective, especially not in social media, which is, I feel, dominated by certain voices. But this is healthy and it's important for all of us, in part because we have this natural instinct to reach out, to connect with one another, a natural instinct to procreate. That's why we're here on this planet. And what I see at the moment is just apocalyptic. It's kind of chaos. Everything's just changed so much. My dating history is varied. I've been dating, maybe for about 20 years, on and off, and I'm currently single. My last relationship lasted 6 years. I was dating someone from Malaysia, and she and I broke up in the pandemic, and so now currently based in Riyadh, presents its own challenges. It's a very, very different landscape. I'm not used to it. I don't even know what I'm doing, thanks to his work, and so it's I can describe maybe some of my experiences later in the talk when it comes to it. But let me hand over to
Yeah, my name is Marcel. I'm Dutch. As you can see, I'm not walking on wooden shoes. I don't live in a windmill. My first relationship was 32 years ago, so we were first friend and girl. We lived together 30 years. We're not married, which was quite interesting, so everybody thought we would get married, get a lot of kids. We broke up 1.5 years ago. We lived the last 2 years in Switzerland. I moved to Dubai in August last year. And the funny thing is, I started experiencing dating from a different perspective because we have been 30 years in a relationship. First, you need to get rid of all the baggage and empty your package without losing the nice things. So when I did that, I started the dating experience in Dubai, so I will share about that later. I recently had a relationship here in Dubai, which ended almost 2 months ago, and we'll come back to that, but I hope you enjoyed it tonight, and I'm looking forward to your questions as well.
Thanks, Marcel. Hi, everybody. My name is Naveen. So happy Star Wars Day. Maybe 4th people. So I've been in Dubai for about 4 years. I am divorced. I had an arranged marriage, so that culturally was rather interesting for me, and it was a bit more of this is what I believe my sort of culture and society expected of me, rather than me following something that I wanted. But that ended terribly, unfortunately. It was a very psychologically draining relationship, and a big cultural shock. So, from an emotional standpoint, it took quite a while for me to step back from that damage, really sort of assess what I wanted in a relationship and kind of what that meant for me. So yeah, my dating life in Dubai has been a bit varied. It's been a bit crazy. It's not always easy to meet people here. I think there's a lot of false expectation, and it can be very confusing. And I think, the guys sort of alluded to this. It is a bit of a minefield out there. I think it's become toxic in a way, and that toxicity is directed at a lot of men. So we find it really, really challenging to be able to kind of communicate, in the way that we used to be able to communicate. 20 years ago, you'd be able to walk up to someone and have a conversation. Now, you get accused of all sorts of stuff. So it's become a very odd kind of environment. So yeah, I'm very, very excited to be here and happy to share my experiences in this. We're not experts, we're all human. We all have our own kind of take on stuff. So yeah, just excited to chat.
Thanks, guys. We got off to a really great start. Yes, we're all human, we're all learning, and we're all single. So let's go into what you touched upon, Matt. You were saying the best ways to meet and approach people. First of all, I'd like a little show of hands, just for a little participation. Who's single here? Okay. Who's divorced?
Single parent.
Okay, good. Yeah, who's a single parent? Okay. Who has never been married? Okay. Who is looking to have children? Okay, that's very interesting. We have a lot of overlaps here. And as you can see, the men and the women are very similar. We're not different creatures. We're not from Mars and Venus. I think what? I know, right? It's so dated. No, but I do feel that at this phase of life, we have more in common than we have differences. But yeah, I know. I look at Instagram all the time, and there's all these relationship tips from both men and from women, and they're both targeting women mostly. They don't target men unless it's the sort of incel community from Andrew Tate, which I would not recommend. I don't know why. There's just a lack of healthy narrative there, so I hope this encourages people to speak up. Let's quickly go to our first question. Again, what are the best ways to meet and approach women? And I know, as somebody who's tried out dating apps, as I think most of us have, it's not ideal. It makes you think that you have a lot of choices. You don't really. It's a numbers game. Everyone has a million choices, 1,000 choices, 100 choices. You don't even know who's real, what profiles are with Dubai Social League is to create real life experiences where you actually get to see people in real life first. But I'm going to pass this mic along to each of you and just give us some tips for men. What are the best ways to meet and approach women? And I know this is an audience of women, so I would like women to also speak up with some of their feedback, because men will be watching the video afterwards.
So I think you raised a really valid point about dating apps. So that's, dating apps are designed to keep you single, right? It is a business, and it is effectively a thirst trap. You're not going to get very far with a dating app in a similar way that Netflix isn't designed to send you to the gym. Netflix wants you to sit at home and watch TV, right? So there's a psychology behind that. So if you look at it from a really human level, 20 years ago, I would say the easiest way for me to meet a member of the opposite sex was at work, because that's probably where you spend the majority amount of your time, is within your own professional circle. And again, it was a lot easier to have conversations with people 20 years ago. You can't do that anymore. Well, I run my own business, so it's a lot harder. You have boundaries that you have with individuals. Even with customers and clients, it's very difficult. So, it used to be quite easy. Social gatherings, like professional networking and things like that, again. But you're not going there today. You're going there to meet people again in a similar strand. So again, very, very difficult. Family and friends, generally, for me, I'm always after my sisters to try to introduce me to some of their very interesting friends, but being their baby brother doesn't really go very far. And social interaction, and I think the guys touched on it as well. Social interaction has changed so dramatically, just even in the last 5 years, that men have become overly cautious about how we engage with the opposite sex, how we communicate, what we communicate, where we do it. And so, you've gone through this process of continuously being told that we're, this toxic masculinity and, you have certain strong opinions about X. So we've taken a step back, and as a result of taking a step back, you've got, a weird kind of dynamic that's taking place now. Yeah. So I still find it challenging to meet people in Dubai specifically. I do find it difficult to broach the subject of engagement or dating or anything like that, because you just don't know what that cultural barrier is, and where the boundary lies, right? So yeah, I'm struggling with it, to be fair.
Yeah, I have a totally different opinion. Because I believe that when you meet the right person, you have the connection, and it doesn't matter where you meet that person and what moment in time. So when I go back 32 years ago, the moment I met at that time my girlfriend, we instantly knew it was meant to be. And I'm still looking, because over the 30 years we drifted apart for reasons is that you develop in a certain way, you have different purposes in life, whatever. But we're still good friends, we have business together. And then after that relationship, you come into a kind of vacuum and you need to reinvent your life actually. Because I needed to identify what I wanted, because we became one as a couple instead of being two individuals and being a couple as well. So what I had to realize is what did I want in the next relationship. So I joined Tinder, then after a month I left because all the profiles are crap. And women are complaining about the fact that men don't read their profiles, but they don't put a decent profile on there. So don't blame the other sex, that's one thing. The second thing is, I met a girl on Tinder. So I signed up on Saturday evening, Sunday evening we were chatting, Monday we were WhatsApping, Wednesday we went out, Thursday we went out, Friday we went out, Saturday I jumped in a plane, traveling to China. We stayed in touch via WhatsApp. It was intense. We started to learn each other. Then I was back in Dubai a few days, went to Japan, to India, back to Dubai. And then I thought, okay, let's try in January. I said, I live in that building. This is my key. You can come whenever you want. Because we both felt an intense connection, I was willing to give the key to her to join. And I left her the choice to come whenever she wanted to come. And it went quite well. But sorry, what happened is that I realized that after the war, I went back to Europe. When I was back in Europe with my family, I realized that I gave away too much of my space again. So I was afraid to lose her because I thought I didn't do well. So what I did is I came back from Europe and I started to put my boundaries. I said, this is what I want. This is what I think is good. She had a slightly different rhythm than I had. And within a month, we drifted apart. We couldn't talk about it. There was also cultural difference. There was a different expectations, which was unfortunate. And then we ended the relationship. When I look back, I thought it was my problem, that I pushed in a certain way. But on the other hand, I learned that there was a reason she came in my life. It was an additional wake-up call. Because I believe you meet every person for a reason. And if you don't learn from a relationship, then you go back in the same trap over and over again. In between the end of my 30 years and before I got into that Tinder relationship, I went completely ballistic. I met a lot of women just to try to find out what I am, what I'm looking for, and what I want. So I went a year almost crazy, just to explore who I was and what I wanted. But the funny thing is, I just got down Tinder again, because I believe it doesn't matter whatever you think or whatever you feel, there is a moment in time you will find the right partner. But if you're chasing it, it will not happen. And I think a lot of male are chasing it. And I sense when I was chasing it, you give a certain energy to women and you push them away. So what I did the last 6 weeks, I met a lot of women and I'm now building more kind of friendship with them. And you sense that some of them still think, he wants to get me in bed. No, I have no intention. I only want to have a decent relationship. When I feel there's a connection and I get that connection back, then I'm open to have sex. But I'm not there to jump in bed with every woman. And I think that is what my neighbor says. I think that is the tension that is there. That Tinder is pushing us partially to have maybe a sexual relationship and not a love relationship. And I think that is one of the challenges that we need to overcome. But the question is, how honest can we be to each other when we meet the first time? And I'm Dutch, I'm direct, I go in with a straight back, because I don't want to waste your time and I don't want to waste my time. That doesn't make sense. So, we can discuss about it.
So what's the question again?
The question is dark secrets. No, I'm kidding. The question, what are the best ways to meet and approach women from your experience?
Yeah, so I don't have anything different than you to add to what's shared already. I mean, I feel that technology has a core part to play in all this. I mean, it has a very polarizing effect. With three of us sat here, we're old enough to remember the time before tech, before smartphones, before apps, when things were a lot easier. I was able to approach people in public, sometimes with alcohol, sometimes without it, and it was very simple. And there was no apprehension or no concerns, no stress. There wasn't any particular threats of doing something wrong. Of course, now in this day and age, anything can happen. And so, if you say the wrong thing, for instance, maybe in a worst case scenario, your conversation will go on social media, because that does happen sometimes. And someone on Twitter might say something like, "Oh, this guy approached me in a cafe and wanted to sit next to me, and he's asking me uncomfortable questions." And then, of course, that prompts the next reply on social and then there's another negative reply, and then this kind of hysteria builds, and before you know it, there's like this public naming and shaming. I feel that men, or certainly the men I've spoken to, see this as a challenge, and so my recommendation is that all of us go back to how things work. I mean, it's very difficult, of course, with technology having such a big part to play in our lives, but all these apps, like I said, they're not designed for data, they're designed for data collection and for advertising and for revenue, in essence, and for profits. And in that respect, Tinder and Hinge and you're doing well, and Bumble, they're no different from any other social app. They're no different from Facebook, they're no different from Instagram. They're all designed with an ulterior purpose, they're engineered for profit. And I find that they have a very divisive effect. I've used a lot of apps sometimes to be successful in terms of meeting people, but it doesn't really compare to physical interaction. And in the past, I used to go to cafes like this and talk to people, start a conversation, and I feel that maybe this is something that we can return to. I guess the question is how we go about doing this. How do we restore this safe space, or this feeling of trust, which I feel is missing in this day and age. Which perhaps leads me to another point, which is that what we're seeing is a dating crisis, but it goes beyond that. This is a trust crisis. This is a crisis in communication. This is a crisis in how we relate to each other as humans. There's something happening in the world at the moment which is very difficult to describe, to articulate. But we're losing trust among ourselves. We're becoming a lot more polarized as a civilization, as a species. We're becoming more argumentative. We're becoming more conflicting, I guess, in nature. And we're seeing this happen all around the world. And we just need to kind of restore this feeling of trust, which, for whatever reason, has gone missing in recent years. And maybe tech has caused it, maybe other factors as well, like shifting social norms. But we need to kind of bring it back to how it used to be. Let's restore this kind of cordial atmosphere. I used to go partying a lot in my youth. I used to go to a lot of cafes, and people used to be very laid back, very chilled, very relaxed. But now we have this kind of distrust among a lot of people, and people are very kind of uptight and self-absorbed. And that makes it very complicated, not just in terms of dating, but also any sort of relationship, friendships. This is a friendship crisis as much as a dating crisis. So, I don't know if it's a bit kind of serious, but yeah.
You guys raised so many great points. I think it's also about creating social spaces, and well, from my experience, I try to curate gatherings where I know that there won't be like MBAs, married but available guys, coming and pretending to be single to pick up ladies, and I also discourage hookup culture. So socializing is really important, and friendship is the first step towards a relationship in so many ways. We just need to create more opportunities for people like us to meet up and mingle and be part of something that's bigger than dating apps, because dating apps are not providing us with what we need. That's why we're still on them. We'll delete them and then we'll put them back on, and we'll download them again. We'll be like, okay, maybe it's the next one, maybe the next one. And that happens to both men and women. They think that the next person could be the one that ticks all of our boxes. But that doesn't happen. But we're just made to feel like it could happen. And then everyone's attention is so divided, and then you don't know who to talk to, and then you don't know who to see, and then you get the same weird good morning rose emoji messages from someone. You're like blocking them. Good morning, dear rose emoji. Oh, come on. Because they're probably sending it to everybody on their list, right? Like, even your name isn't on it. It'll just be like everyone gets the same message. So you'll be like, okay, now what do I do? Send my spider to everyone too? Yeah. So that's why consent is important. But guys, honestly, women complain a lot about guys not talking to them anymore. They'll stare and they'll smile. They won't talk to them. So you should try to, at least if you know that everyone is single. There's no harm in saying hi. It's not sleazy. Yeah, and everyone here is single, so yeah, I hope everyone talks after this. So I'm going to ask you each to provide one answer for each challenges, okay? think of one challenge, and whoever's ready first can answer first. What are some of the biggest challenges men face in the initial stages of dating? You know that time between getting to know someone, going on some dates, and then before it becomes a relationship? Think of the biggest challenge. One challenge per gentleman. Are you stumped? There's no challenges at all? Wow.
I think maybe there's a challenge in terms of understanding one another's expectations. And so, they can differ quite a lot. I mean, you have some assumptions about your partner or your new date, but maybe you don't really understand truly or truthfully what they want to get out of this blossoming relationship. And so, I've suffered this myself in having the wrong assumption about what my partner wanted, and so I led to what the term is, I guess, an early breakup perhaps, or ghosting. That's another topic, but I've been ghosted previously because of that, and it's a really tricky one. I mean, communication is key, obviously, transparency, openness, but for that to happen, there needs to be a certain element of trust as well, early in a relationship, and that's difficult. That's one challenge I face.
I think I see the biggest challenge is, when I reflect on myself, is if I don't know what I want, then I'm not in the right vibe and in the right mood. So how can I find the right partner? Because if I am indecisive on what I'm looking for, I think women have a certain intuition, they will sense that. And then immediately there is a kind of barrier between male and female, and that is then pushing them away somehow. So I think the challenge for us as male is we need to be at a certain level that we know what we want, why we want it, and then how will we fill it. But we sometimes get lost, to be honest, because we are doubting, and that is probably then I think, let's be honest, women are more intuitive than men. And if you are not aware of that, then you will have maybe the ghosting, or you will have other experiences. But I truly believe that.
I think for me personally, one of the things that I challenge myself about is spending less time worrying. Spending less time worrying about what the other person thinks about me, and focusing on what I think about them. And I think a lot of men are pleasers. We want to please, and in our effort to please and portray that sense of security and sensibility and sensitivity, there's an element of that self that starts to erode. And I think in that initial stage of a relationship, everybody has insecurities about everything, right? And I think that's very natural. And human nature, that tendency is then to focus on what the other person is thinking, rather than you applying the time to say, well, you know what, is that person right for me? Do I actually like them? Are they good? Right? Can they provide value, in my life, rather than the other way around? And I think we as men do that less. And I think it's for me over the last few years, I've been trying to use that as a barometer in a way to measure whether that relationship is good or not, if that makes sense.
Again, I'm very impressed by all the authenticity here, and a lot of times we think men are not very emotionally articulate, but I guess these are the exceptions. And I hope there's more men like this out there. I would like to have you guys think about your top two, at this stage of life, for you personally, your top two red flags and green flags in a woman. In a woman who could be your partner. And I want to know this because, we assume so so much. And we want to know, straight from the heart, what are your top 2 red flags and green flags at this moment in time? Who would like to go first? Should I go first? I haven't even thought about it. Okay, for me, while you guys are thinking, red flags. Number 1, a bad temper. Number 2, a bad temper. Green flags. Number 1, kindness. Wow, this is harder than I thought.
It is.
And number 2, consistency.
Yes.
Why do they flake out? Why do they start off so strong and then just get really flaky? Oh, I was really busy with work. Hello, we work too. Yeah, and then we're on the same level now. Yeah, I'm gonna give everyone a chance after this not after this question, but after a couple of questions, then we'll all chat together, and hopefully Sana will tell us about the Peter Pan syndrome, which many of us have experienced, but none of the guys on the couch know about it. So I think they should know what a Peter Pan syndrome is. Who knows Peter Pan syndrome? Raise your hand. Really? Okay. Nobody knows except for us. That's so weird. Why do we only know it? Peter Pan syndrome. Okay. And who has been ghosted here? Everybody. Who has ghosted others here? Yes? Why do we do that? Because it happens to us. So then why should we provide it? They don't give us this. Sounds right.
It's hard to like say to tell something. Someone doesn't get the picture, then you have to.
Especially the good morning red rose emoji guy, right? That's like, what do you even say? Ladies, there's place for you here. Come on over. Okay.
I just want to say one comment about
Sure.
Marcel.
Marcel. Yes.
Nav, Marcel, Matt.
I just really like that Marcel was like saying that I know guys are socially and emotionally aware. Obviously, they are a lot more. But when he said like when he went back and he was doubting himself, like I thought guys never ever have that awareness, you know? Like are they? Because we always doubt ourselves like as women. But it's nice to hear that he actually felt, you know, that way. Or he felt that way about that. Because I feel like men don't express that. So they don't.
And when you guys said,
Yeah. You know, I think for me the biggest challenge is what I didn't explain yet is my first girlfriend. We worked from day one on self-development. So I did a lot on spiritual and intuitivity, raising my awareness. So I did Reiki 1, 2, Reiki Master, Mediumship, because if I'm better connected to my intuitive self, I can better understand a female energy, but I can also understand my life better because I am able to visualize better what I want. And actually 6 years ago, before I moved to Switzerland, my vision was to improve the lives of 1 billion people. So my background is in sustainability. For those who know, it's about people, planet, and profit, so you bring that together. I moved to the company in Switzerland. They didn't understand what I was doing. They had no clue what my intentions were, so I left. And actually, 3 weeks ago, I reformulated the vision for my new company that I founded in Dubai. And the 1 billion is back, but now with a stronger foundation. So the people that I have now around me is all focused on the 1 billion improving of people's lives. Since the 3 weeks ago, I attract a lot of money to do big projects. So because I raised my spirituality, I'm more into my intuition. I can visualize what I want to achieve. And the same counts for a relationship. The fact that I used those 30 years to grow as an individual, it was because she was challenging me on that aspect. And I could have said no, because I could have said, yeah, I don't see the value of it, I don't want to self-develop. So in the last 8 years, I have a regular spiritual coach and a business coach. And that allows me to grow. So when I came out of the 30-year relationship, I had 3.5 months of grief counselor to help me to put the relationship in perspective. Because I know a lot of friends who went from one girl to another girl to another girl. I have a friend who has been 4 times married. He didn't learn his lesson, and I didn't want to make a mistake. So I think the fact that my ex pushed me through that curve helped me to be who I am today. But I also realized that I always said that I want to be 100 years old. My grandfather died when he was 96. He had a heart attack in his garden. He had never seen a hospital. I said, that is the life that I want. And that is what I want to visualize. So I still have 40 plus years ahead of me. So I want to make the best out of it, but I can stay stuck in what I want to do. So if you connect to your vision and to your intuition, I think more men should do that, then everybody benefits.
And on that note, your red and green flags, just one or two each.
So red flags for me, for a woman, is what I did before as well, is pleasing. Just put honey around the mouth. That's one thing. The second thing is,
Could you explain that? Honey, as in?
it's like that whatever you say is okay, and if you challenge, even that is okay. So not going into, it is not that you have to have a constant fight, but you need to have deep discussions, because not everything is perfect. And if you cannot have a moment to agree to disagree, then you don't have a relationship. That's my opinion.
Good.
So, and I had to learn that also. So, but I see that now as a red flag. The other thing that I see as a red flag is, no, I don't see enough. I think that's the most important one. The green flag is that you are open to learn and challenge each other. Because if you do not inspire or challenge each other, then there is no growth in the relationship. So that if that person does it. And the second thing is building trust together, because trust building takes time. And if someone allows you to build trust, that are the two things we need to build a strong relationship.
Very good.
What's the question again? Sorry.
You can do one of each, you can do two of each.
Yeah, so I think a red flag for me would be an inability to communicate what they want. So I think that's really frustrating to me, because in a lot of relationships I've been in, my partner hasn't been able to directly tell me what they need, and I can't read people's minds yet, at all. And I think it would be an awful thing to be able to read someone's mind. Private things that you would find there. So I think, you know, that to me that's kind of a key thing in terms of a red flag, not being able to have that level of communication. I think the second red flag for me is about them not being honest about themselves. So being sort of self-delusional, right? You know, and there's a lot that goes around, even with men. And
It's a lack of self-awareness.
it's really a lack of self-awareness, right?
Do men and women lie about the same things, do you think?
Definitely.
That's the pleasing here.
100%, right? You know.
Any examples?
So, you know, a really good example of where we fail is understanding our limitations and inability to do this. So we're not very good at, you know, you could be innerly self-critical, but you don't advertise that, right? You know, it's not something you would feel very comfortable about saying, well, I actually have a flaw. But the thing is, if you're being in an intimate relationship with someone, ultimately they're going to uncover those flaws. So unless you're honest about what those are, you know, you're never going to be, you know, to the point that Marcel was making about self-improvement, self-awareness, you know, that directional focus. How can you have it unless you truly understand, you know, the stuff that you get wrong? And I think it's an important part, you know, as you know, people in business, we are quite critical about the things that we do. And I'm quite analytical in the sense that I look at the things that I don't have the ability to be able to do, and then find the right people to be able to go and execute it on my behalf. It's being able to be self-aware that you need help. But that's no different in an intimate relationship. And if you walk through life thinking, you know what, I'm okay, right? You know, I think it's a huge, huge red flag. In terms of green flags, it's again the opposite. So you could have someone that's absolutely self-aware of what they do and very good at how they communicate, you know, what it is. intentions are also very clear, you know, what they need. And I think for men, one of the things that we fail to do sometimes is tell our partners what we need. But we're also very honest about what we need. And it could be as being as direct as, hey, just leave me alone, I need 5 minutes to myself. It literally is, leave me alone, I need 5 minutes. There's no intervening in that.
So even women have communication issues,
How-
not
how-
just men. Sometimes women, and I'm guilty of this as well, like my whole life, I used to just hint things and expect somebody to just magically understand. Men don't get subtlety, right?
It's not that we don't
You
get
have to
subtlety.
be, no, but you have to be really clear and direct. We have to be Dutch. We just have to act Dutch. Embrace your inner Dutchness.
I think the key there is we've kind of reached, you know, we were talking about societal norms and the way that, you know, things have transpired over the last few years. If again, just talking personally, I would prefer to have an open, frank, honest conversation with a potential partner, you know, about all the things that are important to them. Because unless they tell me what's important to them, how would I know? And if, you know, it's like, you know, you see these silly little TikToks or videos saying, you know, I passed a hint to my boyfriend or, you know, to my partner and they didn't get it and they didn't. Well, why would we? There are 110 other things going on in our brain, you know, and also all you then do is create a feeling of resentment because suddenly now you think your partner doesn't understand what you want. Well, have you actually told them what you want, or are you just giving subtle hints? You know, it's kind of like, don't be cryptic, just be direct.
Just be Dutch.
That doesn't always work. It doesn't
It
always
doesn't
work.
work.
No, not always.
Yeah, you need to be Dutch, but also give compliments. Matt, do you have anything to add to this?
I don't really, these are really mature, considered responses, so I don't really have anything.
Only if you want to.
I don't know, and I guess responsiveness, I mean, which is pretty much what you said as well, so it's not so much the, you know, a climate to transparency whereby both partners are very open about what they want. It's also being responsive at the right time. You know, I get this all the time through apps, for instance. I mean, we all face this. You know, you feel like you get somewhere, then, you know, there's no reply, there's no reply, there's no reply. And it's like, come on, I mean, it's like, you know, you need that sort of initial connection, and you need to nurture that connection to get going. I feel, I mean, a lot of these problems that we talk about are common to both genders, or all genders, maybe I should say. I mean, you know, to all of us. You know, these are very human, very innate, you know, human issues. And it's great that we're talking around this because we all want the same thing, fundamentally. And we're all striving to achieve the same thing. So let's, you know, let's try and bring down these, you know, barriers or these boundaries.
I have one red flag to add. So,
Red or green?
a red one. So, ladies, be clear and direct to men. If you mean no, don't create any doubt, because men don't understand. If you do not use the word no, they think there is still an opening. So if you
There are
really
some
know,
men who
We're
think
not
no
programmed
means
like
yes.
this.
Sorry?
It doesn't come within our settings, you know.
no, but I didn't have that personal experience, but I heard a few friends of mine. They say they keep me hanging because they might think or say no, but they don't use the word no. So I keep trying. So if you want to get rid of a guy, make it clear, a simple no. And some will not understand, but the majority will understand.
And the some that don't understand, just block them. They're stalking you. Just be really careful. I've got a really tough question now, which I know everyone will be interested in knowing.
I need to go to the toilet.
Very funny, you're not escaping this. Okay, but you don't have to answer about yourselves, you can just answer about in general. Very general, men at your sort of phase of life or career level, etc. Single men, I mean. And here is the question. What are some of the biggest fears and anxieties that women might not realize about men addressing marriage and having children? It could be loss of independence, it could be financial responsibility. I mean, you can just spell it out in plain terms, and it doesn't have to be about yourselves personally, but generally something women don't realize. Because a lot of times women feel like they're just being led on, and it's not a relationship, it's a situationship. The guy doesn't get serious on time, and she's ready to, even if she's told him that this is what her end goal is, and he's like, oh, let's go with the flow. You know, who hasn't heard that? So here we go.
Okay. It is a difficult question to answer, but I will try my best. I think there are probably two things in my mind when it comes to something like this. Number one, I think a lot of men are asking themselves, what's the benefit of getting married nowadays? You know, marriages can be deemed as a very archaic concept. It's a legal binding. Having gone through a divorce, which had a huge financial impact on me for a very, very short marriage, I would think twice if I was to go down that path again. So I'm quite clear to a prospective partner that even though I am very keen to settle down and to have a family, it doesn't necessarily mean that marriage is at the forefront of my mind. And I think there are a lot of guys nowadays that probably think very similarly because of that financial burden. And it is a huge financial burden. The way that the law is structured around divorce is still very much in the favour of the woman, even with all of her kids.
In some countries, yes.
Not everywhere in the world. When I come from India,
Not in
I
ours.
walked away from my marriage with nothing. And that's obviously because peace was paramount to me. I was like, I mean, of course I work and I make it work, so I just want to say, you know, I completely hear you, even though I'm on the other side, I'm not a man, but, you know, I chose to pick the battle. I was like, you know, if it means walking away with nothing, I can make it work.
Yeah.
But I understand when you mean the price is high.
And do you mean just during divorce, or do you mean through the marriage as well?
Well, I think that there's a decision I think every couple needs to make, right? You know, and you know, whether that's in terms of what the equity in the marriage is, yeah. And I don't mean like financial equity. I mean how do you balance what your roles are, and are you, or have you clearly defined what those roles are? And if you are going to make the decision of being a single income house, right? And you know, from a man's perspective, and your partner is at home, and their responsibility is that, you know, the home, the kids, you know. So there is a lot of pressure then on one individual to fulfill a huge amount, right? You know, for that family unit. And I think the economics of today have changed so dramatically that in a lot of cases, being a single income house is just not sustainable. It's not feasible, depending on, you know, again, how that culture divides it. So I think it's really important to discuss in quite significant detail about what that intention is, and you know, how you want to fulfill your obligations to one another, because it isn't just about the you know, the financial burdens. It's also the emotional strain that it can take. And you know, Guy, I read, actually really finally before I came here, I was reading this book that was written in the 1950s, and it was a woman's guide on how to please your husband. It's hilarious, actually. It's really, really funny. It was written by the BBC, and they turned it into a little documentary. It was so funny. It was literally an instruction guide on when your husband comes home, this is things that you need to do. And it just made me laugh, because I'm sure my dad watched that, right? You know, his mentality would have been in the 1950s and the 1960s exactly what he was going on to do. So I do with it now, right? You know, so I think in a long kind of roundabout way, what I'm trying to say is that it's a very individual equation that you need to measure. But I think women don't really kind of see beyond that point of view where it is, this is my objective, okay, right. Now, collectively, how are we going to go do something, right? And I think there is a fundamental shift in mentality once you have children. The roles change once again, right? You know, and depending on how, you know, if I look back at a generational conversation, you know, where I suppose my mother spent most of her time looking after her children and not focusing on her husband, and my dad's like 90, yeah. So his mentality is, well, I've missed out on my wife for the last 40 years because she spent all the time looking after her kids. And so, how do you balance it out? It's a really difficult equation.
Do you mind if we speak without the mic? If everybody okay with that?
If you can hear us.
Yeah,
sure, no worries, no worries.
Thank you. For the mic.
And we switch it off.
Open place. Good. Thank you.
Good. So when I look at how my perception has changed on marriage and on children, so when I met my 32 years ago, my girlfriend, at the first date, at the end, we asked, do you want to get married? We both said no. Do you want to have kids? We both said no. So there was an easy go in building the relationship. When I now look where I am today, I think part of what Nat says is there is a lot of insecurity by the male to give the wrong answer. Because they might be afraid that if they say yes, then the girl says, I don't want you, you want to jump too fast into kids and into marriage. If they say no, the girl might walk away. So I think it is something about communication which needs to grow over time. And I think the challenge at the end is if you first find the love for each other, then you can have the discussion about marriage and about children. So that at least that is what my perception has changed. So start talking about it at the moment it's right, and then have that deep discussion. Because I think a lot of males are afraid to push the lady away if they say no or yes in a too early stage. And I think the lady should realize when is the right moment, but not probably at the first or the second date. That's really interesting.
Because I'm married, I have different perspective to this.
Why not talk about this at the first or second day?
Because the male might be, I think when I now look at the perspective, so at that time I was young, I didn't care, and I had a clear vision, I don't want to get married, and I don't want to get kids.
That's very important what you said, because we are all at an age where we don't really have the time to waste on years and months of, okay, let's see, let's have discussions after discussions. So from my perspective, it's actually recommended to have this talk from the beginning to know where you stand, especially when you reach a certain age, because we are not like 17 years old and we are just trying around, you know.
But I also like different stages of life. Once you are in teenage, you can have a love story for a few years. When you move to the 30s, you need you have less time. I need to be committed someone. So if you have mutual understanding at the beginning, I believe is good tool to discuss what's expectation.
Yeah.
From being, committed for marriage. Do you like children? Where you like to live? Discuss that.
Yeah, I don't mean that you need to wait 5 years, but I think the first 2 or 3 dates you need to learn to know each other, and then you can use the question to throw it in.
I mean, you're not going to say that you're going to want to marry that person, but you can tell them that that is your long-term goal of dating. Like, you don't want to date for no reason. I mean, I wouldn't know from meeting someone the second date that that's going to be the person.
No, but let's be honest, a lot of men will say yes, but they're not ready for it.
Yeah.
Because they feel pushed in a corner that they don't want to be. So if you go into the discussion, be aware that you might push the guy in the corner he doesn't want to be.
And the adverse reaction is that individual could be a really good and great fit for you, and you've just popped the wrong question
And actually, they will no, I'm not
But
really
we
that
spend
interested.
our whole lives being scared of saying that because it scares guys away. Like a man who is ready and emotionally grown up and mature will not say
But
that he's
I
not
think
ready.
that's slightly unfair because we're not emotionally immature.
You know what I mean? Whatever it may be, because that scares men. Like when you say, I want to have kids and I want to get married, it scares them away. It's a fact.
But do you not agree that the way we look at relationships and goals are all about marriage, and in a society which is focused on this union, times have changed, and sort of to the point I'm trying to make is marriage may not necessarily be the end goal for every guy,
Yeah,
right? But that doesn't mean they don't want to be in a committed relationship.
So you have to learn the intentions from the beginning.
Correct.
I mean,
But
this is he's expecting a short-term relation or a long-term commitment
Yeah.
or a marriage.
So
it should be
what's
clarified from the beginning.
so just to this point, what's keeping you with someone just because you have a legal document that says you're married? Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing
I
at
mean, you
all.
both have to want that. You
Right.
both have to want
So to the point I think I'm trying to make is our concept of being in a union is beyond something that's legal. Don't forget, marriage is just a taxation. It's a legal thing that you do.
But also depends on the cultural wise. I mean, you could live 10 years and have children, depend on your culture. For example, my culture, I would never have ever children without marriage. So it depends,
Yeah.
the cultural.
I think ultimately it's a value system that needs to align.
I